Okay, so I guess what we're trying to establish here then is that when we talk about crime statistics, whether it be supposed black on black crime or whether it be the overrepresentation of black people in the prison system, we see something that's a little more systemic as opposed to just the behavior of black people. I guess to add another layer of analysis to this, if you take a look at how the system has treated, if you just remove the idea of even just mass incarceration, which we're seeing, okay, there's a laser focus on the black community, they're over-policed, and they are arrested at much higher rates for, having, what was it, a few grams of crack cocaine?
That's right.
Which, a rich white person would not be arrested for at the same level unless they had, 10 times that almost, right?
Right.
And so that's interesting, but is there, a lot of people talk about the breakdown of the black family as well, right? They talk about single motherhood, they talk about absent fathers, they talk about that. Bill Cosby, before we found out a few things about him, was very known for, introducing this kind of black respectability politics of, really what we should be talking about is where are the fathers. How does that play into how the system is incarcerating all the fathers? How does that play into the idea that, you can't really talk about single motherhood and complain about it when you're the one who went and arrested the father for, something that you wouldn't arrest a white person for? How do those two things jive up?
It's a lot easier to blame the individual, right, than the actual system, right? Because the system is it's you can't really put your finger on it. There's a lot of moving parts, right? But about the breakdown of the family, what's interesting about that, for example, in America, out of the amount of people are incarcerated, there's 13% of all incarcerated population are women, right? And amongst those 13% of those incarcerated women, 80% of them are single mothers, right?
So the system targets single mothers too.
So it targets single mothers too. So when we talk about the breakdown of the family, we really need to look at this, the effects it has on entire families when they take away the father figure in the home and they take away the mother, right? So what are the children really to do? So that's what we really need to talk about.
The other portion to add to that is that from a point of view of the systematic oppression of African Americans is that when globalization ramped up, they were one of the hardest hit communities of by globalization. So when the drug war started, and when this is in the early 80s under Reagan, what happened is a lot those manufacturing jobs that African Americans had were all outsourced, to Mexico and other places in the world, and because they didn't have because they didn't have the education and they didn't have the training, they weren't able to move to other jobs in the community.
Sure.
So this predisposed them to being jobless, and so when we talk about what breaks up families, it's obviously economics, right? Yeah. So how can you blame a community for systemic effects that were beyond their control? Absolutely. This is the height of injustice.
Yeah. Right. So building on your point about the effects of globalization in the black community. In 1970s, before globalization really hit hard, 70% of working age black men had blue collar jobs.
Yeah.
So when their jobs were outsourced and they were taken away from them, where were they left to go, right?
Yeah.
So it's blow after blow after blow after blow on the black family, right?
Yeah.
And it's as if when people are talking about how the black family breaks down, it's as if they're saying, "Oh, we just wanted to stop," It's our fault. We'll fix it, But
it's like they think black men are allergic to fatherhood or something, as opposed to there being a system that is actually preventing families from growing the way they do.
Yeah.
But Trump's bringing the manufacturing jobs back, right? We're confident about that, and we're optimistic. Okay. Don't answer the question.
Yeah.
But I guess, and to me this is interesting because, we're talking about families and how this the breakdown of the black family in specific. I was reading Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, and one thing she mentions, excellent book by the way, if someone wants to understand racial politics in America, that's probably a go-to, a beginner point, and everything you think you know about what's going on with black people and white people, just read the book, and maybe you know it already, but I think you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
But a not sponsored plug, by the way. But what I was saying is that one thing that I found interesting is she was mentioning how families were actually stronger during the Jim Crow era of America. We're talking about the 50s where segregation was still like a thing, like explicitly, and how when that system of segregation became much more subtle, and it injected itself into the prison system, into the judiciary, and into the police, and into the drug war primarily. That's that became its front. How that was much more devastating for the black family. How it's almost as if, being black during the Jim Crow era was in some ways better than the system as it is right now.
Yeah, and in the book, I remember reading that portion, and she asked this question, like this hypothetical question: would one choose to live in Jim Crow where they can make an honest living and go back to their family every day, while dealing with all the overt forms of racism, or would they choose to live in modern times and have a high likelihood of being in jail for decades? When people talk about progress in America, they present it as if progress is has been linear, right?
Sure.
As if it's been progressing steadily, getting better and better and better. But in reality, it's been kind of like a roller coaster. Sometimes there's a push up for the black community, and then there's a backlash against them, right? That set them back.
And I guess to kind of conclude on this point to an extent, why? What is it? What is the backlash, right? So I think most people who are decent human beings want to give everyone a fair shot to progress, grow their family, be strong, and have their own thing. Even people who may not have the most racially sensitive views, who may not read up on mass incarceration, generally don't have anything against black people, I assume, right? I ascribe that decency to most people. I think it's a true thing. So who's this backlash coming from? Are there people up there that just don't like black people? Is that what's going on? Or what is the incentive of this system to disguise its racism through mass incarceration? What incentive does it have to do that?
Well, this backlash, it comes from the elite of society, building this false dispute between the people, right? Where if the black community progresses in some way, it's infringing on the rights and the progress of the white community.
Okay.
That's why in the Jim Crow times, and even in the civil rights era, when they're going around interviewing individuals, they say, and even now we see it, whenever there's any type of progress, they say, our rights are being taken away from. When they talk about affirmative action for black college and university students, there's that high profile case where that young lady felt like she was being discriminated against, right? Yeah. So the backlash always comes from the other side, but what's important to know about this is that people are being set against each other.
Okay.
Right? People are being set against each other, and
so who's setting? You're saying the elite are setting up, the common white people against common black people. Why? Why would they want to do that?
Because they keep everybody at this point where their survival instincts are always working, right?
Okay.
So they always feel like they have to work, they have to fight for what they have, right? Okay. Because everybody's fighting for scraps, really. So whenever there's any type of progress from one side, there's naturally backlash from the other side, right? So people are always at each other's throats.
And so they're keeping the entire, I guess, working class, you could call it, or just regular people. Class, They're keeping all of us in subsistence living to an extent, not actually, obviously, but just to an extent, while reaping all the, because we know wealth inequality in any capitalist countries, but in the United States in particular, we've seen those statistics. You're saying it's basically the 1% getting us to fight each other so they can walk away with all the money.
Yeah, historically that's how it's been, right? And even back in when slavery was abolished, and what they would do is they would give racial bribes to poor white work people, right?
Sure.
To give them this sense of superiority over the black population. So they would like manufacture this dispute between two groups, right?
Sure.